AITA for telling my husband that defending another woman against me is disrespectful. Obligatory. This happened last month but I'm still pretty irritated about it. Not sure if that's the best word for what I actually feel, but oh well. Betrayed, I guess. So, I got into some pretty childish social media drama last month. It was nothing that I personally started. I had commented on a friend's post who had just had a breakup and was just offering support. Well, some woman that I don't know and have never heard of messaged me in response to my comment saying don't give out relationship advice when your own relationship is trash, or something to that effect. Like I said, I had no idea who this woman was. So, all I responded with was who are you and what are you even talking about? My relationship is great and I wasn't forcing advice onto anyone. She never responded. So, I show my husband the message and he immediately gets weird. Apparently he knows this woman from years ago and she is a really nice person, so someone must have hacked her account because she would never be mean or rude. The thing is, he only hung out with her twice, nearly 12 years ago, and spoke to her once online since that point, so he truly does not know this woman at all. So I simply asked him why he was trying to defend a woman who had reached out to me being nasty instead of defending and taking my back. His response was, I just don't think that it's her. I really don't. He then messaged her himself and asked her if it was her, and she said, you know me just about well enough to know that I wouldn't say that. My son was using my phone. It was probably him. Her son is 9, I creeped, so I called bullshit. Anyways, he continued defending her. So I told him that it was extremely disrespectful to me that he is defending this woman and turning his back on me when I had done no wrong. He says I'm an ass for not dropping it and that she said it wasn't her, so it wasn't. He also said just because I married you doesn't mean that I can't defend another woman. I don't always have to agree with you. Which was not the point I was trying to get at, obviously. AITA to include, it reeks of affair, I know. But the woman lives 6 states over, so that's impossible. Update, his work tablet just pinged and her chat head just popped up. Apparently she saw this post. He has responded to her and they are still talking. I will update with the conversation in a second. So far, he has my back. Shorty came in here to see if she was the arsehole but now has to worry about her husband cheating. Crying face, crying face, crying face, crying face. Right? Like what the fuck? He's spoken to her 3 times in his life, 12 years ago, but he knows her better than that. You're not getting the full story. It doesn't have to be a constant physical meeting to be an affair. People have emotional affairs all the time. Or maybe it isn't an affair, and maybe your husband just doesn't know how to react to an old flame for some reason. But this woman is no stranger. You know me well enough to know is not a statement you make to someone you've spoken to 3 times 12 years ago. Edited to add, looking through your comments, it seems most likely this was an old fling from before she moved away. Maybe he hasn't kept in contact with her since then, but crazy people stay crazy even when you leave them alone. Info, how does this work? How does she or her 9-year-old know where to find your friend's post and then you? Does she follow you? Also, after 2 meetings and 1 phone call, how would either she or your husband know so much about each other that it may not be her? Let's add in that he jumped right in to message her for an answer. You wouldn't do that unless there was a closer relationship than you let on. 2 areas of concern for me. Don't give out relationship advice when your own relationship is trash. And so I show my husband the message and he immediately gets weird. What exactly was the full nature of his relationship with this woman even if it was 12 years ago? You say you married 3 years before her move in 2017, meaning you married in 2014. His interactions with her would have been 2008 and earlier based on the timeline. It seems to me that maybe this woman was a serious potential love interest for your husband and that, for whatever reason, it didn't work out, but maybe he still carries a bit of a torch for her. It is highly confusing why he would 1. Get defensive for her over what is seemingly a very small Facebook drama matter, and 2, even worse, actually reach out to her to try to clarify her position. Those actions suggest something else is going on here entirely. Yes, you went CSI and found nothing to implicate your husband. That's great. But is it at all possible that her situation has changed and maybe she is thinking back to 2008 when she let a real catch your future husband, get away, and her comment towards you was an attempt to stir the pot and test the waters? Because if so, it seems like maybe there could be something there if he is defending her so strongly. Keep working your husband. There is information here that hasn't come to light yet, but tread carefully. This situation seems really sticky. Best of luck. AITA for telling my in-laws that they would be responsible if me and my husband divorced. First, some important context. Last year me and my husband had our last child, and the pregnancy was extremely complicated and life-threatening to both the baby and myself. At one point there was a 30% chance of both of us being alive by the end of it. Due to this, I also have some complications that are going to impact me for the rest of my life. During this time my husband was terrible. He did not support me at all and would get quite angry whenever I wanted to talk about it. He brushed it off, didn't help around the house with the other kids, and got to the point where he was emotionally abusive. About a month after my daughter was released from the NICU, my loving and caring husband came back, but I was destroyed and told him that I wanted to divorce. Obviously we started going to counseling, and during this time we found out that he had Asperger's syndrome and was just really good at masking. Afterwards our entire relationship made a lot more sense to me. We always knew he was socially awkward and he has a lot of quirks, and all of our arguments can be traced back to symptoms of his autism. Now, after months of him not wanting to tell anybody, he finally got the courage to tell his parents about his diagnosis. Their response? "Oh, we always knew that. You were diagnosed with autism at 2, but we didn't tell you so that you can have a normal life." I was furious. Like I said, all of our arguments have always been because the symptoms of his autism. So much hurt and pain for both of us could have been avoided had we known. My husband could have learned better coping techniques as a child, and I could have learned better coping techniques earlier in our marriage. I was so mad at them that I screamed that their selfishness could have cost us our marriage and may still. My husband was pretty pissed too, and we both hung up the phone. Now I'm getting phone calls saying that I took it too far and that his Asperger's diagnosis shouldn't have any impact on our relationship if I actually loved him. NTA. He should have known about his own medical history. They shouldn't have withheld that from him. Also, had he known, he could have learned ways to deal with his emotions or other things you've argued about in a more healthy way. By trying to help him, they have hurt him and you, and I think it is reasonable for you to be upset, but it's even more reasonable for him to be upset. If it's taken him several months to work up the courage to tell his parents, they 100% made him ashamed of not being normal whenever he had a neurodivergent behavior. Be careful of what they might say/do around eldest son, Op. NTA. You don't love him less because of his Asperger's but because of his untreated issues. Hopefully you two will be able to work through the issues and your husband figures out how he wants to handle his parents. I'm just adding this to be clear. I don't blame them for the actions of my husband, neither does he. He is and was a full-grown adult and made those decisions himself. He is taking responsibility for his actions and is trying to change moving forward. Throughout our entire relationship, our biggest issue has been that I don't feel like I'm loved. We've been in and out of counseling because of it countless times and have discussed this counseling with them. The problem is that the counseling only ever put a band-aid on the problem instead of actually fixing the root of it. Now that we are aware of the actual issue, I have been able to readjust on expectations of him and he has been able to get counseling for his autism. They have had multiple opportunities to tell him about this but have chosen not to. They have been aware that his lack of communication skills has been taking a serious toll on our relationship for a while before this. I do not love my husband despite of his diagnosis. In a lot of ways I love him because of it. However, this man prides himself on being able to fix anything, and when he was faced with the fact that he couldn't fix what was going on with me, he got extremely angry with himself and then took it out on me. I'm not angry with them because of his actions. I'm angry with them because had we had known from the beginning, he would have been able to get the counseling he needed when this situation started, and we would have been able to mitigate the impact of it. NTA, Sounds like your in-laws don't really understand mental disorders at all and don't care to. You have every right to be upset and resentful, and so does your husband. Especially your husband. I'm so sorry. I'm glad you have his diagnosis though, and it sounds like you're doing everything in your power to rebuild your relationship. I hope it works out well for you both. Also, Asperger's has a strong genetic connection, so teaching your children about it is super important. If your in-laws can't respect whatever you need in the future, I would strongly consider distancing from them. Thank you. We were having our oldest tested for autism and told therapist about it, and that's when my therapist suggested that we also get my husband tested. Both tested positive for Asperger's. AITA for telling my sister I'm not taking my nieces again. I, 27F, have 2 sons. My oldest is 6 and my youngest is 2. My sister, 31F, has 2 daughters ages 9 and 7. Up until a year and a half ago we lived in different states. Then she moved back and I started spending some more time with my nieces, and it was horrible. First time, took all the kids to McDonald's and the oldest threw a fit because she didn't get the toy she wanted. She was yelling and saying I needed to buy her another meal to get her the toy. She tantrumed all the way back to my sister's house. During this the youngest kept throwing food too and wouldn't stop when told to. Second time, my sister and I took the kids to the zoo. The youngest spat in my oldest's ice cream because he got the last of the flavor she wanted. My sister made very little deal out of it and shrugged it off. The oldest told my oldest that's the reason you give them what they want. Third time, was going shopping. Sister asked me to take the girls for the afternoon because things came up. Had them in the car and they both threw a fit because they didn't want to go grocery shopping, and then they kept kicking the cart when I was going around. The youngest tried to break something so we would be made leave. I stepped into discipline many times and got told I was not their mom and they didn't have to listen to me. I ended up dropping them back with their dad. Fourth time, brought all 4 kids to the park and they didn't want to stay because they thought we were going to a water park. They did everything they could to ruin my oldest having fun, and then when I pulled them back and said if they couldn't play nice or entertain themselves, which I tried to get them to do, they would run in different directions and yell. So we left after less than half an hour. Final time, they were at my house so my sister and her husband could have a date night. They wouldn't eat the food I prepared, nuggets and fries, because they wanted pizza. They didn't want apple pie, they wanted chocolate cake for dessert. They were spitting in everyone else's food and throwing it on the floor. I got the same attitude when giving discipline and they started yelling when they weren't getting their way. This lasted all night. They wouldn't go to bed. Didn't sleep, woke both my kids up. Each time I sat and spoke to my sister and she seemed to take it seriously, especially after I pointed it out after the zoo incident, and then the last time she shrugged it off as kids will be kids. And I told her if that's how they behave then I'm not going to have them in my home or take them anywhere. She said that was fine. Then after she returned to work post-lockdown she asked me to help out in a few emergencies which I said no to, and she called me an ass for not helping. But the way they behave I am not willing to sign up for that, especially if she's going to shrug it off. AITA, I wanted to add this here because more than one person has brought up why I would give them so many chances and subject my kids to them. It's because I was happy to finally be more active in their lives, and I have always loved having a big family around us. We grew up with a lot of cousins and sometimes they spent time at our house and we spent time at theirs. I wanted that for my kids. So yes, I let it go on too long for my own kids' sake because I kept hoping my sister was serious and the next time would be better, but it never got better, and eventually I do have to put my kids first and say enough is enough, which is what happened. I am sad that it ended up like this though. Adding some more details here that have come up along the way. Also thank you for all the responses. I was not expecting it and I am relieved to see them all. My parents have had some bad experiences with them too. Throwing food on the floor, yelling at them, being demanding and rude. In my parents' house they never spat, but there was an incident in their own home where my sister decided my dad should get the bigger steak and the oldest did not like that, and so, yeah, You don't need me to go into details. My parents were horrified. They're still horrified. They would never have allowed us to behave anything like that, and at their ages it's just awful. I don't know of any specific issues. Part of me is wondering if there is a reason they moved back here. Maybe it's just my negative mind after everything, but maybe they lost all their support there. Maybe they had babysitters and help there, but his family got tired of it and refused because of the behavior. No way would that behavior come out of nowhere, but I wasn't around enough when they were little to know if they were acting out like that or not. Otherwise it sounds like they just get away with doing whatever they want, and so they never learned how to stop. I am aware they've had some issues in school, but I don't know any details really. I can't imagine they would get away with the spitting though. No way would a school tolerate that.